What's up, everybody? Welcome to the podcast. Now, I'm Alex, and in this video, I want to talk about what Dewey, Gale, and Sidney are up to in the next Scream movie, Scream 5, Scream 2022, whatever you guys want to call it. I want to talk about what they could be doing leading into this movie. It may not be the most consequential of things once we get into the movie. I'll kind of explain why as this video goes on, but I do think it could be interesting. It could, open up different avenues that we haven't really thought of. So, as always, make sure if you guys do like the stuff, you're subscribed, bell icon turned on. If you guys, and what I always say too, if you guys want to follow me on Twitter, Podcast Now 15 is my Twitter handle. There'll be a link for it in the description below. I make these Scream videos every single Tuesday. As we get closer, I am going to be picking it up. I got a lot of big plans, kind of for like the second half of the year. Obviously, that's a little bit away, but I mean, we're already towards the end of February here, so lots more Scream stuff. But again, a new Scream video every single Tuesday for you guys. So I wanted to put these three together. I guess technically I could have milked it and kind of had them all spread out. Okay, maybe I should have, but that's okay. So I want to talk about all three of them. Now, one thing I will say, and this is what I alluded to in the beginning, when I was saying like it may not matter when it comes down to what the movie, when the movie actually starts, is that does, I would say it's not like a trope, but it does oftentimes happen in movies where, honestly, it's all genres, right? Where characters could have had a life or could have had a specific set of things they were doing or whatever leading into the circumstances of the movie. And then all of that stuff is kind of dropped. Now, not every movie, and sometimes what the characters were doing does have a big part of it, okay? Or what they were doing has a big part of, like, their life, right? And that's important, honestly, with these three characters, because I'm not saying, like, it's not important what they did before. If you even look at Scream 4, right? Like, Dewey has a very, very, like, he's risen up the ranks, right, of these sheriffs and of these police officers. I mean, he's risen up the ranks. Gale has gone through some tough times, right? That was kind of the thing with Scream 4. She's kind of unsure. She's not really in the right headspace, all that stuff. Sidney has, like, really used her past experiences to try to better others. So, like, what these characters are doing, I would say mainly Dewey, but I would also maybe want to throw Gale in, and that makes me feel bad about Sidney because then Sidney's kind of just there. I mean, if we're being honest, Sidney, for the most part, for these movies, has always been kind of like a passenger where, like, so she had like her boyfriend, like in Scream 2, right? Like, she has him and he just kind of plays a part of this, it matters, but it kind of gets dropped, and they go through relationship troubles in Scream 2, but it doesn't really matter what's happened up until Scream 2. It just, so you know what I mean? I think that's kind of the most important thing I want to drive home, that it doesn't, obviously, if they're still doing stuff, or if they have relationships, or if they have children, right, or whatever the situation may be, if that happened, it still obviously matters in the movie only because of the circumstances, but it doesn't really matter what they were doing up until that point. It's kind of just backstory for the character, right? One of the things I want to believe, and now there'll be people that always comment on these videos and say, well, I heard a rumor that this happened, or a lot of people are saying this. I do think, I mean, there obviously are, true things when people say, there's rumors of this or that. I think some people, are making it up. I'm not saying you guys. I'm saying people that sometimes maybe call themselves leakers, stuff like that. I have seen people say, there's a lot of rumors that Dewey is the first one to go, or that this happens, or that this person does this, or whatever. And so those are things, I guess, to keep in mind. I want to believe, and I don't even know if this has been said, I want to believe that Dewey has maybe retired. So remember, they try to keep their ages and the distance of time in between movies and filming, that actually matters, right? I think there's some slight tweaks with like Scream 2, Scream 3. They're not exactly perfect in terms of, again, the amount of time in between movies to the amount of time in between, like, their lives, of the events in their lives. But definitely when it comes to, like, between Scream 3 and Scream 4, like, they tried their best to take that step and say, okay, it really has been however long. Was it like 11 years? It's been 11 years or 10. I mean, they really embraced the whole, like, it was the new decade thing, right? But it was definitely, okay, it's been at least 10 years. These characters have done a lot of different things. Again, some of them have done positive things. Some of them have had some troubles in their lives, all that stuff, right? And so you expect that to happen again. So if we're talking about Dewey first, let's start with him first. I think, and the reason I said all that, by the way, is because I think their ages matter, right? So David Arquette, I believe he's 51, okay, or let's just say 50 maybe to make it even. But when you're a sheriff or when you're a police officer, when you're ever, you can retire. I mean, you can retire rather early. You retire earlier than most people. I don't want to say, he's not necessarily at the age where he would need to retire, but I just feel like it would be, and it would be kind of like a classic thing, but it would kind of be a cool thing if him and Gale, maybe both of them retired, or at least maybe Dewey did, or, however it would work. But, because again, like, he's been through the ringer. He's been close to death multiple times. Actually, all three of them have, but he's been close to death multiple times specifically, right? And he's got a, physically taxing job and all that. And again, I know you may say, well, Alex, does any of that stuff really matter? Well, what would be interesting is if he did retire and he wasn't in kind of the spotlight of doing that stuff, right? And then he had to be brought back into it because of a new series of murders, right? And that would, I guess, be assuming that he makes it, through like the first scene, right? If he's not the opening kill. But I do think, that's been done before, right? Where it's like somebody in a position of power that's been through things before, they retire, they get out of it, they have to come back to it. And honestly, I'm not going to compare him to Tony Stark, but the idea of like Tony who wanted out and then he was brought back in because of Thanos, and then he was really out once the snap happened, right? But then he was like, dang it, I gotta go in one more time. But he knew the risks, he didn't want to die, and then he ended up dying, right? And like, again, I'm not comparing him, okay? But I do think that would be kind of a cool, and that was an amazing arc for his character at the time in Avengers and for the MCU in general. So for Dewey, to compare it to the MCU, no, I honestly think that would be kind of a cool thing. It could also explain maybe why, again, we heard the rumor, and it doesn't have to be true, but like the idea that maybe they get into a fight early on in the movie. Now, I know people said, well, they get into fights every single movie. That is true. They're always fighting, but I mean, obviously it's that kind of love-hate relationship, right? But a reason they could be fighting is because neither of them really have anything to do, right? Maybe it would kind of be even the opposite of what Scream 4 did, where it's like Gale kind of has this like hole in her life where it's like she's not really being productive, she's not really into anything, and maybe that leads to fighting. They could do it with Dewey, where it's like Dewey's just sitting at home. Maybe he even sees he sees on the news or something that there was like a series of murders from like a ghost face kind of thing, and he's like, shoot, but then they're like, well, you can't go back in there because you're retired, you should stay out. And he's like, you know what, I just can't do that. So that's something that I kind of want to will into existence. I'm not saying that will happen. It could very much start with him just being in his normal role, right? But I think that would kind of be a cool little character twist to him before the movie starts that would impact the actual movie. Now, Gale is a little bit more difficult. So Gale is, for what we kind of know, especially at the end of Scream 4, she's still basically a writer. She's gonna write like the next book, all that stuff. They kind of make the joke, right, that like, should Sidney help her with that? But and you look at her age. So like Courtney Cox, she's 56, I believe, is her age. So that's another one where it's like, okay, after all the stuff she's been through, she could just be a writer, all that stuff. She doesn't really have to be out in the field. Now, what's interesting is this one, there's more stuff to back up. We had that leaked shot of her in like a report, like the red suit, the reporter's suit. So she does get back out there. So again, is that another character twist development kind of thing where leading into Scream 5, she is retired, she's done, maybe she's still writing books, but like that's pretty much it. She doesn't do news, she will never do it again, and then again, she's brought back in. Or maybe Dewey dies and then she's really brought back in, where she's like, oh, I need to tell this story. I mean, that could kind of seem like a self-centered way, but like, I need people to know, maybe about his life, about all that stuff, and maybe the only way I can do it is by reporting on it, right? So that's something. We haven't talked about kids, and I do want to get to Sidney, so let me just throw in, I mean, I guess they could have a child. It would be possible. There's a lot of children things going on, right? Like Dylan Minnette and all that stuff. There's different children things going on in this movie that could very much tie to the original movie, that could tie to even characters in Scream 4. So it's not out of the question. Children for any of these characters does add like an extra layer of like, shoot, because now if they die, they're leaving again, kind of comparing it to Tony Stark, they're leaving the child behind, right? So that is an interesting thing. I don't know if any of them will have it. I did see this by Sidney though, so let's talk about Sidney. To be honest, I have no idea what she does she just go back into what she was doing in Scream 4? Maybe at the same time, maybe she moves on to something else. Maybe she just literally is just she's just completely retired. She's just, at home. Now, one thing that would be cool for her is to have a husband. I know I saw people say, some people said it would be cool for her to have a kid. If you really want to take ages again into perspective, so like Courtney Cox was like 45, 46 at the time of Scream 4. If you wanted to pretend like she really was that age, her having a kid between 45 and like 55, let's say, isn't the most realistic, right? For Sidney, though, she was around 36, 37 for Scream 4. Now she's obviously, well, she's 47, but she was like 46, 47 when she was recording or, filming this movie. She could have had a kid, okay? So if you want to bring in the kid thing, she definitely is somebody that could have done that. It's kind of like a do or die situation where it's like, if you want to give her a kid, there are things you could do with that child going forward. If you want to take like big time jumps, stuff like that, you could do it. And to be honest with you, this is really the only time that I think you have the opportunity to do it, because if you make the next Scream movie rather soon, right, you're not going to have that much time in between. They're still going to be around the same age. You're not going to be able to give her a kid, I think. It does depend on where they want to go, right? We've talked about it. Like, do they have plans to make Sidney basically the Laurie Strode of Halloween, where she can still be 60 years old and still be in these movies? If that's the plan, then I guess if that's the plan, they could still do a kid. In fact, Laurie Strode, right? So they could easily do it, but they're kind of running out of time overall, because this is the last big gap that was between movies. Whereas because I guess there could still be, like, they could take another 10-year break, bring her back when she's nearing 60 and do it again. But that's not a good plan, right? That's obviously not, I think, what any of us want. That's probably not what any of the people making this movie want. Okay, so that one is tough. I think the husband thing. So when we talk about Sidney, to be honest with you, in terms of what she's doing, I kind of give that to you guys. You let me know in the comments what kind of occupation you think she has right now. But her husband would be interesting. It really would, especially when we're probably going to touch upon elements of like Billy yet again, right? And kind of go through that and have some sort of connection. It would maybe be cool for her to actually, and also just in the way of like an actual person, would be kind of cool to like have her settle down. Now, the issue with settling down, especially in horror movies, is, well, number one, you're never really settled down. We know that because she's going to get attacked at some point in this movie, right? But the thing, in addition to it, is like, well, obviously the husband is put at danger. Like, he could very well die. That's a juggling act too, because maybe we all want Sidney over these last 10 years to at least have settled down, found a husband, enjoyed life. But the thing is then, like, do you kill him off in this movie? And then it's like, well, how many times can you kill off boyfriends or now a husband of her? You know what I mean? And then, but it's like, well, if you have her be single her whole life, then it kind of does go into a Laurie situation, Halloween, where, like, she gets very addicted to the idea of Michael. Really, that's her entire purpose of, like, living as she's getting older in her 60s and onwards. All she is focused on that. I don't know, like, do we want that for Sidney? Don't we kind of want her to relax, have her own life, stuff like that, right? Can she do that on her own? I mean, maybe, probably, but I think a husband obviously would be a good idea as well. So that's the one that's kind of really interesting to me. And also, by the way, if you have a husband, if you have a child, especially for her, that makes it even harder for her to want to come back. We've talked before multiple times. How do you bring Sidney? I guess we're assuming again that she's not there. But obviously, if she is there, then the problem is solved. But if she's not there, how do you bring her back? Well, it's easier, I think, if you're alone. If she's by herself, it's rather easy, okay? But if she has a husband, if she has a kid, or, one or the other, then it becomes a lot harder, because it's like, I'm not going, again, weirdly enough, becomes like a Tony Stark thing, where it's like, I'm not going to sacrifice my husband, my husband and child. I'm not going to sacrifice them to go back and potentially get myself killed or get them in danger, okay? And that's something that I think that would be really interesting to juggle in this movie. So let me know, guys, in the comments below. What do you think? What do you think? Dewey, Gale, Sidney, what do you think they're all up to? Obviously, there's more characters, too, right? Like Judy, right? But let me know what you guys think they are up to in the comments below. Again, as always, make sure you guys are subscribed, bell icon turned on so all these videos go up. Do a brand new Scream video every single Tuesday, and so I hope to see you guys on the next one.